Resilience, from the Latin verb resiliere, the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. Bacteria, from the Greek bacterion, a member of a large group of unicellular microorganisms that have cell walls but lack organelles and an organized nucleus, including some that can cause disease. Bacteria, the masters of resilience. We consist of more bacteria cells than human cells and have been living alongside them from the beginning of time. And for less than 100 years, we have been fighting the diseases they cause with the drugs that we believe are very strong and effective. How then is it that they still attack us and often win, infecting people and killing them? Humans keep developing new drugs to fight bacteria, but microbes are becoming even stronger and more resilient. Bacteria can be found virtually everywhere. They are in the air, the soil, the water, and in and on plants and animals, including us, humans. They can thrive in places like ovens and refrigerators, air conditioning ducts, car mufflers, oil spills, survive in temperatures above the boiling point and in the permafrost, float high up in the atmosphere, and even withstand radiation 1,000 times greater than would kill a human being. How did bacteria become so strong? It's because microbes had enough time to train themselves to become tenacious and resilient. How it all began. Earth's first inhabitants. Microbes first appeared on our planet about 4 billion years ago. The first bacteria were real survivors that lived through the most hostile environments of Earth. The sun's lethal ultraviolet radiation was not blocked by the atmosphere that we have right now. Instead, it was full of noxious chemicals that were coming from continuous volcanic activity and space debris that were falling on Earth. Then about 2.7 billion years ago, a group of clever microbes learned the process of photosynthesis. As a result, oxygen slowly accumulated in Earth's atmosphere. At first, oxygen was poisonous to life, but bacteria didn't give up and learned how to use it as energy. When humans joined the ecosystem, bacteria colonized our bodies and our coexistence and mutual resilience began. The bad bacteria learned how to attack their hosts, us humans, and our ancestors' bodies learned how to fight back, and often survived, the diseases the bacteria caused. Humans versus bacteria, long before antibiotics. Long before modern antibiotics and vaccinations, there were many medicines for the treatment of diseases that afflicted ancient civilizations. Many of these primitive medicines were surprisingly effective. Some ancient societies used what we would consider proper antibiotics today. For example, in Nubia, an ancient kingdom that was located in present-day Sudan, people used tetracycline without knowing to cure sickness. In the 1980s, a group of researchers discovered that Nubian bones dated AD 350 to 550 contained this modern antibiotic. How did ancient people know about it? A theory for this discovery today is that the tetracycline came from the bread and beer naturally, which were staple foods of those ancient people. People realized that beer also helped cure sickness and used it as a medicine for adults and children. Ancient Egyptian priest doctors also used moldy bread as an antibiotic, thousands of years before modern antibiotics were discovered. They would put the moldy bread into an open cut or wound because it is packed with fungi and bacteria that effectively kill the species that cause the infection. Other examples of natural antibiotics that our ancestors used for centuries for healing and are still used today are oregano oil, raw apple cider vinegar, honey, turmeric, garlic, grapefruit seed extract, cabbage, and colloidal silver. The battle between bacteria and humans has been going on since the beginning of our coexistence. For all but the last less than 100 years, our ancestors survived many diseases without even understanding their cause, and often attributed them to supernatural forces beyond their control. Then, in 1877, the so-called Golden Age of bacteriology began, when Robert Koch established strict scientific criteria for linking bacteria to a disease, and isolated bacterium that caused tuberculosis and another one that caused anthrax. By the end of the 19th century, those causing diphtheria, pneumonia, leprosy, plague, and others were distinguished. So, the enemy was identified, but there were no effective cures except for natural remedies that didn't always work. In the past, a minor cut could kill. Around half of the people undergoing surgery would not survive, and pneumonia and tuberculosis were both death sentences. The discovery of antibiotics. The Scottish doctor and biologist, Sir Alexander Fleming, was the first to notice the antibacterial properties of the mold Penicillium notatum, and is recognized as the father of the first antibiotic. However, the way he made his discovery was incidental. In 1928, Sir Fleming worked as a professor of bacteriology at St. Mary's Hospital in London. His research laboratory was not very organized, and the professor was very forgetful. The untidy professor returned from a month-long holiday only to find mold growing on one of his petri dishes. He observed that on the edges of the mold, the bacteria were dead. He called the antibacterial substance penicillin. And it was the discovery, which Time magazine claims, would change the course of history. In 1999, the magazine named Fleming one of the 100 most important people of the 20th century. Later, Sir Fleming said,
"When I woke up just after dawn on September 28, 1928, I certainly didn't plan to revolutionize all of medicine by discovering the world's first antibiotic or bacteria killer. But I suppose that was exactly what I did."
The new drug was released in the 1940s, just in time to save the lives of thousands of soldiers injured in World War II. The antibiotic era has begun. Now just a few pills could cure patients from many previously incurable diseases. Surgeries became safer. Doctors claimed that we had defeated bacteria. We thought we had won. Bacteria fights back. In 1945, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine was awarded jointly to Sir Alexander Fleming, Ernest Boris Chain, and Sir Howard Walter Florey for the discovery of penicillin and its curative effect in various infectious diseases. Remarkably, in his Nobel lecture, Alexander Fleming pointed out that bacteria could become resistant. He said, "It is not difficult to make microbes resistant to penicillin in the laboratory by exposing them to concentrations not sufficient to kill them. And the same thing has occasionally happened in the body." However, at the time, this comment did not get any attention. 3 years after penicillin was first introduced as the wonder drug against bacterial infections, resistant strains appeared in some hospitals. New antibiotics were introduced in the late 1940s, and likewise, very soon after their introduction, resistance to them was noted. In 1953, during a Shigella outbreak in Japan, a first strain of bacteria that was resistant to multiple drugs was identified. Over the years, and continuing into the present, almost every known bacterium has developed resistance to one or more antibiotics. Bacteria have proven to be much more innovative, adaptive, and resilient than we imagined, and have developed resistance to antibiotics at an ever-increasing pace. When antibiotics first came out, nobody could have imagined we'd have the resistance problem we face today. We didn't give bacteria credit for being able to change and adapt so fast. Bonnie Lynn Bassler, a molecular biologist who teaches at Princeton University. A little more than 70 years after the first antibiotics were introduced as the magic cure, we are losing the battle to bacteria that are acquiring resistance to multiple drugs. Our best defense. Microbes are the first form of life on Earth. The humans are newcomers compared to them. We cannot compete with them in terms of evolutionary speed, diversity, and adaptability. They have spent millions of years defeating the very microbial products from which the most of our antibiotics are derived. So of course, they will be able to resist any new drug that we invent. We have to accept that we will never eliminate microbes. Even if we create a super drug that would protect against a wide range of bacteria, it would cause more harm than good, because it would also kill the good bacteria that helps us to survive. Astonishingly, we are more bacteria than humans, since 90% of cells in the human body are bacteria, trillions of microorganisms that outnumber our own human cells by 10 to 1. But because of their small size, microorganisms make up about only 1 to 3% of the body's mass, or between 2 and 6 pounds. When we hear the word bacteria, illness is often the first thing that comes to mind. Fortunately, they're not all bad. At least 400 of them help our bodies fight other deadly microbes. Of the approximately a million known microbes, only 1,415 cause human diseases. Sometimes they cause illness, and even when they do, they don't mean to harm us. Our diseases are just side effects of their life cycles. But most of the time, microorganisms live in harmony with us, their human hosts, and play a vital role in our health, helping us to survive. Bacteria on our skin create a film that acts like a natural moisturizer and protector. In our intestinal tract, we host about 100 trillion microbial cells that help digest food that we can't digest on our own, produce some vitamins that we may not be getting enough of from our food, stimulate the immune system, and protect us against bad bacteria. The bottom line, without good bacteria, we would die. We can't win by fighting. The answer is to live in harmony with our deadly friend, resilient bacteria. And why are we humans so resilient? Maybe because we are mostly made of bacteria.